For 3 months, my wife Rachel told me I was paranoid, crazy, losing touch with reality. Every time I asked why she was coming home at 10 p.m., why she was texting someone named D at 2 in the morning, why she suddenly needed space, she turned it around on me. You need help, Lewis. This obsession isn't healthy. I started doubting myself so badly I considered checking into therapy. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you question everything, even your own memory. But then I found messages on her old iPad. Messages between her and Derek, her divorce attorney, planning exactly how they'd destroy me in court with a fake restraining order, take everything I owned, and make me look like a dangerous man. They had it all mapped out. Except for one thing. I had been recording our conversations. And when Rachel took the stand in that Cleveland courtroom and performed her tearful victim act, I pulled out that recorder and pressed play. Her own voice confessing everything. What happened in the next 60 seconds is the most brutal courtroom collapse you'll ever hear. Viewers, if someone tried to gaslight you and destroy your life, how far would you go to expose the truth? Let me know below. Before this story begins, subscribe. You'll never look at relationships the same way again. My name is Lewis Jones. I'm 38 years old and I work as a senior logistics coordinator at a freight company here in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, I used to work there before everything fell apart. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Lakewood, the kind of place where neighbors still wave at each other and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. It's quiet, safe. Or at least it was until I discovered that safety was just another word for ignorance. I've been married to Rachel for 11 years. Rachel Jones. We were high school sweethearts who lost touch after graduation, then reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding when we were both 27. She was a paralegal at a downtown law firm, sharp as a knife and twice as beautiful. I thought I'd won the lottery. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, like your opinions mattered, like you mattered. I proposed 6 months after we reconnected. She said yes without hesitation. But here's what I've learned about people you think you know. They're only who they are until they decide not to be. Rachel grew up in a broken home. Her father left when she was 9, and her mother remarried twice before Rachel turned 16. She told me once, late at night with her head on my chest, that she never wanted to feel abandoned again. I promised her she wouldn't. I meant every word. But maybe that fear of abandonment twisted into something I couldn't see, a need for control, for backup plans, for escape routes I never knew existed. Right now, I'm sitting in my living room, dim light filtering through half-closed blinds, staring at a text message that reads, "She's filing the restraining order tomorrow. You need to act now. I have 24 hours to save everything." It started 3 months ago. Small things at first, the kind you dismiss because you don't want to be that husband, the paranoid one who questions every little detail. Rachel began coming home late, sometimes 9 or 10 at night. She'd blame it on case files, depositions, demanding attorneys. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She'd been at that firm for 7 years, worked her way up from assistant to senior paralegal. She was ambitious. I respected that. But then the accusations started. I remember standing in our kitchen one Tuesday evening, bright overhead lights making everything feel too exposed, too raw. She was chopping vegetables with this aggressive precision, the knife hitting the cutting board harder than necessary. I'd asked her about a text I'd seen pop up on her phone at 2 in the morning the night before. She'd said it was her sister. But her sister had called me that afternoon asking if Rachel was okay because she hadn't heard from her in weeks. "You've been acting paranoid, Lewis," she said without looking up. "It's exhausting." I told her I wasn't paranoid, just confused. She finally looked at me then, her eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. "So now you're tracking my calls? Interrogating my family? You need help, Lewis. Seriously." She slammed the knife down and walked out, leaving me standing there alone, doubt creeping in like fog. That night, lying in bed with Rachel's back turned to me, I started wondering if maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was losing my grip. That's exactly what she wanted me to think. Her law firm specialized in family law, divorces, custody battles, restraining orders. She knew every psychological trick in the book, and I was about to learn she'd been studying me like a case file for months. Rachel moved out 2 weeks after that kitchen confrontation. She claimed I was becoming unstable, that she needed space for her own mental health. I didn't fight it. I was too exhausted, too confused about what was real anymore. But she left her old iPad behind, the one she'd used before upgrading to a newer model last year. I wasn't snooping initially. I was looking for a photo of us from our 5th anniversary, something to remind myself of better times, proof that what we had was once real. That's when I found the messages. A contact saved simply as D. I opened the thread and my hands started shaking. He suspects anything? Dee had written. Rachel's response, no. He thinks he's going crazy. Perfect. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further. You sure the lawyer's ready? Dee asked. Everything's in motion, Rachel replied. He won't know what hit him. I sat there in my home office, the desk lamp casting long shadows across the scattered papers on my desk, trying to process what I was reading. Who was Dee? What motion? What lawyer? Then I scrolled further and found a photo. Rachel at a bar, smiling wider than she'd smiled at me in months, with a man's arm draped casually around her shoulders. His face was partially visible, handsome in that polished, expensive way. I didn't recognize him then, but the pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. 4 years ago, Rachel and I almost divorced. I'd lost my job during a company merger, and we went through 6 months of financial hell. She'd threatened to leave, said she didn't sign up for instability. We went to counseling. I thought we'd moved past it. But now I realized she'd been holding that against me, waiting for the right moment to execute whatever plan this was. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing in a courthouse hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, cold tile floors making every footstep echo. My attorney, Patricia Calloway, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharper instincts, walked beside me carrying a briefcase that felt like my entire future. Across the hall stood Rachel with her legal team, and there he was. The man from the photo. Tall, clean-cut, expensive charcoal suit, confident smile. He was standing closer to Rachel than any attorney should stand to a client. That's Derek Millstone, Patricia whispered. Partner at Rachel's firm. Divorce specialist. Ruthless reputation. Everything clicked into place. Derek. Rachel's boss. The man she'd been planning this with, probably sleeping with. I'd met him once at a firm holiday party 2 years ago. He'd shaken my hand, smiled warmly, told me I was a lucky man. He'd been sizing me up even then. Rachel had filed for a restraining order claiming I'd been harassing her, making threats, showing up at her workplace unannounced. None of it was true, but she had evidence. Text messages, emails, witness statements from coworkers who'd apparently seen me acting erratically. All fabricated. All designed to paint me as unstable, dangerous. In Ohio, a restraining order could destroy everything: my reputation, my job, my access to our shared assets. It was the perfect setup. We entered the courtroom, and I felt the weight of what was about to happen. Rachel was playing a game I didn't know the rules to, using weapons I didn't know existed. But I had something she didn't know about. Something I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket like a talisman. A small digital recorder. 3 weeks of conversations. 3 weeks of her letting her guard down. I just needed the right moment. Rachel took the witness stand with the practiced grace of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. The lighting in the courtroom seemed to soften around her, making her look vulnerable, small, afraid. She wore a simple blue dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. Every detail calculated. I'd lived with this woman for 11 years, and I was watching a performance I'd never seen before. He started changing about 6 months ago, she said, her voice trembling just enough. He became obsessed with my phone, my schedule. He'd accuse me of cheating with absolutely no evidence. He started waiting outside my office building watching me. I'd get dozens of messages a day demanding to know where I was, who I was with. I felt trapped. I felt afraid. Derek guided her through the testimony with surgical precision. And did you respond to these messages? He asked. At first, yes, Rachel answered. I tried to reassure him, calm him down. But it only got worse. He started showing up at my workplace during lunch, making scenes in the lobby. My colleagues noticed. I had to report it to HR because I was afraid of what he might do. I watched the judge's face, watched him taking notes, his expression growing more serious. Rachel's mother had been in an abusive marriage with her second husband. Rachel grew up watching her mother endure it, trapped by fear and financial dependence. She told me once that seeing her mother like that had shaped everything about how she viewed relationships. She'd sworn she'd never let a man control her. I'd respected that. But now I saw how she'd weaponized that trauma, turned herself into her mother's ghost, turned me into the monster she'd grown up fearing. The courtroom was silent except for Rachel's occasional sniffle. When Patricia called me to testify, I felt every eye in the courtroom follow me to the witness stand. I sat down, placed my hands flat on the wooden rail in front of me, and forced myself to breathe steadily. The judge looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I was already guilty in his mind. I could see it. Mr. Jones, did you ever threaten your wife? Patricia asked. No, I said clearly. Did you harass her at her workplace? No. I went to her office twice. Once to bring her lunch she'd forgotten, once because she'd asked me to drop off some documents she needed. Both times I called ahead. And these text messages Ms. Jones has presented as evidence of harassment? Patricia held up printed screenshots. Did you send these? I looked at them carefully. Some of those words are mine, I admitted. But they're taken out of context. Edited. I asked questions about where she was, yes, but they were questions any concerned spouse would ask. She's made them look obsessive by removing her responses, by cutting out the conversations that came before and after. Derek shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. My client has provided unaltered screenshots verified by a digital forensics expert. I looked directly at the judge. They're altered, I said firmly. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge raised his hand for silence. Mr. Jones, that's a serious accusation. If you're claiming evidence tampering, you'd better have proof. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, dreading, preparing for. I looked at Patricia. She gave me the smallest nod. I reached into my jacket pocket, my fingers closing around the small digital recorder I'd been carrying for weeks. I do have proof, Your Honor, I said. I have her in her own words. I pulled out the recorder and placed it on the witness stand. Rachel's face across the courtroom shifted from confusion to something I'd never seen before. Pure panic. Her eyes went wide, her hand gripped Derek's arm, and I saw her whisper something urgent to him. He looked just as rattled. 3 weeks before my wife moved out, we had an argument, I explained to the judge. I'd started recording our conversations because I felt like I was losing my mind. I needed proof of what was being said, what was real. That night, she let her guard down. Patricia took the recorder, verified it with the court, and played it. Rachel's voice filled the courtroom, clear and cold. You don't get it, Lewis. This isn't about you. This is about me finally taking control. You've been dead weight for years. My voice responded, confused, hurt. Dead weight? Rachel, I've supported you through everything. Supported me? You lost your job. You made me feel like I was carrying us. Derek sees my value. He knows what I'm worth. Derek? Your boss. There was a pause on the recording, then Rachel's voice came back sharper. He's more than that. And honestly, you've made this easy. I'll file the restraining order, claim you're unstable, and take everything. Derek's already drawn up the paperwork. You won't see it coming. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. I watched Rachel's face drain of color. Derek was on his feet objecting, citing procedural issues, questioning the recording's authenticity, but his voice sounded hollow. The judge leaned forward, his entire demeanor changed. Ms. Jones, he said slowly, is that your voice on this recording? Rachel opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her carefully constructed story was crumbling, and there was nowhere left to hide. Rachel sat frozen at the defense table, her hands trembling visibly. Derek was whispering urgently in her ear, but she seemed unable to process his words. The judge asked again, his voice firmer this time. Ms. Jones, I need you to answer. Is that your voice on the recording, and are those statements you made? She finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine across the courtroom for just a second before darting away. Yes, she whispered. That's me. The admission seemed to break something in the room. The judge's expression hardened. And the statements regarding Mr. Millstone, regarding your plan to file false allegations, were those accurate statements? Rachel glanced at Derek desperately. He was staring at the floor now, his confident demeanor completely shattered. I was emotional, Rachel tried. I didn't mean, the judge cut her off. Ms. Jones, based on the evidence presented here today, I'm denying your petition for a restraining order. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into potential perjury and the filing of false statements under oath. Mr. Millstone, I'm recommending the State Bar Association review your involvement in this matter. The courtroom erupted. Derek tried to object, to salvage something, but it was over. Rachel had built her entire case on lies, and I'd just exposed every single one. Patricia leaned over and squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she whispered. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. This woman I'd loved, who I'd built a life with, had been willing to destroy me completely. Had probably been planning it for months, maybe years. As we left the courtroom, I saw Rachel sitting alone on a bench in the hallway, her head in her hands. Derek was nowhere to be seen. I kept walking. 3 months later, I sat in my Lakewood living room with divorce papers spread across the coffee table. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, lighter. I'd opened all the blinds, let the afternoon sun pour in. The final signature line was blank, waiting for my pen. Rachel hadn't contested anything. She couldn't. The recording had destroyed any leverage she'd had. The divorce settlement was straightforward. I kept the house. Our finances were split fairly. She walked away with her career in tatters. Derek had been quietly forced out of the firm 2 months after the hearing. Word spread fast in Cleveland's legal community about what he'd done, how he'd helped fabricate evidence, nearly destroyed an innocent man. Rachel had been reprimanded by the Bar Association and eventually resigned before they could suspend her license. People kept asking me if I felt vindicated. Honestly, I just felt tired. Vindication doesn't erase 11 years of lies. It doesn't give you back the nights you spent doubting your own sanity, wondering if you were the crazy one. It doesn't fix the trust that's been shattered so completely you don't know if you'll ever be able to give it to anyone again. I picked up the wedding photo that still sat on the mantel. Rachel and I on our wedding day, young and smiling, believing we had forever figured out. I stared at it for a long moment, then placed it face down in a drawer. Some things needed to be put away before you could move forward. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I heard what happened to you. I think my husband is doing the same thing to me. Can we talk? I stared at the message, then typed back a single word, yes. A week later, I sat in a coffee shop in downtown Cleveland across from a woman named Emily. She was in her early 30s, gripping her coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in her world. She'd found me through a mutual acquaintance who knew my story. Her husband had been coming home late, accusing her of being paranoid when she asked questions, making her feel crazy. It sounded painfully familiar. What should I do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back and thought carefully before answering. Document everything, I told her. Don't confront him until you have proof. And most importantly, don't let him make you think you're losing your mind. You're not. Trust your instincts. They're probably right. She asked what would happen if she was wrong. Then you apologize and move on, I said. But if you're right, you'll be glad you were prepared. We talked for an hour. I told her about the recording, about Patricia, about how to protect herself legally and emotionally. When she left, she hugged me and thanked me. I watched her walk out into the Cleveland afternoon, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose maybe. Or just the simple knowledge that my pain could help someone else avoid theirs. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust anyone again the way I trusted Rachel. But I know I won't be a victim anymore. She thought she could rewrite my story, turn me into the villain while she played the victim. She was wrong. I'm the one holding the pen now, and I'm writing my own ending. My name is Lewis Jones. I'm 38 years old. And this is what surviving betrayal looks like. As for Rachel and Derek, their story isn't over yet either. If this shocked you, subscribe, like, comment and share, because the next story is worse.